Debunking crypto myths. I'm delighted to be joined today on the Elevate podcast with Sam, who is our host. He is our facilitator of our Navigating Digital Assets course. Now, I'll tell you two things about why we're having this conversation. Well, there's several things, but I would like to introduce you how I came to contact with Sam, how I came to know him, and a little bit about why we're hosting this specific conversation now. So I had the pleasure of being invited to one of Sam's physical events by one of our long-term supporters, Deborah Holden, and it was such a fascinating evening. I traveled down to the south of England to join Sam in his event, and we had this 3-hour deep dive into the financial reset, the benefits of crypto, debunking the myths between digital assets, blockchain. How do we navigate this emerging world, and what are the opportunities? What are the risks? What's the good, the bad, and the ugly, really, of what this has to offer? But what I loved the most about the way that Sam presented this is in a world where people tend to go to binaries, Sam did the very opposite. He said, this is what we know, this is what we don't know. And he had this very pragmatic way of sharing the landscape of which he had invested, years of his life researching and navigating. So I was so impressed by the conversation that we first invited Sam to be a guest on our Elevate network to join us for one of our events where we had a 3-hour deep dive on the financial reset, Sam, which was an amazing event. But then the feedback was so good. It was literally our most attended event that we'd had yet this year. So the feedback was so positive that we decided to work together and launch our first course, the Navigating Digital Asset course, which brings me to the reason why we're having this specific conversation today. Because when we first launched that course, we had a lot of positive feedback, but we also had some criticism, we'll say, to put it lightly. We had some bites. And I had some pushback, and I welcome all feedback. We're not here to try and please everyone, but a lot of that critique, if you will, was perhaps from a position of not really knowing what we were covering in the course and what it was all about and why it's important. And what it illustrated to me was some of the myths and some of the misinformation, if you will, even around crypto and the digital finance, that I thought it'd be really good for us to have a conversation here today and share what some of those myths are. So, Sam, I'll finally say hello to you and
Thanks,
welcome
Dan.
To the podcast. I just wanted to give a bit of preamble to why we're here today. I think it's so important.
No, it's perfect, and it's great to be back. It's always enjoy being on the Elevate platform and having chats with you. We've had some great chats on camera, off camera. And today we're doing a bit of both. And I'm really glad you start with binaries, Dan, because that's really been not my bugbear, but something I've seen for so long and how problematic they are, and they get pushed in the mainstream. They also get pushed hugely in the alternative, what we call the alternative media, and they're not helpful because really they're dividing people and they're not based on education and knowledge and awareness. And like you said, if we just look at crypto briefly, you can get very simple binary, which happens a lot. Crypto good, crypto bad. Are you for or against? I'm neither pro nor against crypto. Crypto just is. I like to understand it, know what it is. And as I've always said, when you understand and know what things are, you're then empowered to take good decisions that resonate with you, that are sovereign, that come from you, not because somebody else has told you it's good or bad. But when you can understand something, then it's you that decision. It's not the group. It's not even the group think of there's a bunch of weight people that told me this. You need to understand it. And that's what I'm really passionate about in anything I speak about, is that it comes out of you. Yes, I like to be a facilitator. So I think, or I've been told, like people have a gift for getting across quite complex things in an accessible manner. And finance and crypto is one of those subjects that really is confusing for people. And hopefully I bridge the gap to a lot of the techie kind of people who've been a long time can't speak to a lay audience, whereas I feel that, I'm getting the feedback that I can. So it's really important to understand stuff, and then you can decide, for yourself. And then you're not following anybody, and it's really sovereign. So again, the binary's super problematic. Work out what something is, and then go from there. And then you can't be manipulated by, either side of the argument, getting too emotional either way. And you've just got solid footing, and it's all about having a solid footing, having a building block, and then you can do great stuff.
Brilliant. So, Sam, we've both referenced this idea of binaries. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by that in this context?
Well, in this context, you get this binary of, because of which we'll discuss, the incoming, central bank digital currency, the real shift to sort of digital surveillance. What gets lumped in is that anything digital is evil. Okay, therefore, again, whether it's crypto, whatever, digital, bad, non-digital, great. And I know you discussed it in one of your recent things of, I've got no issue with somebody not being a fan of digital stuff. I'm not a particular fan of digital stuff. I just understand what it is and what it isn't. And if you really want to be a purist and go there, then absolutely I support that and go and live that. But it's the old idea of people saying, we must eschew all technology, it's all evil, whereas really it's a neutral tool. I always compare, talk about the internet. How much great stuff is on the internet? It can be used in whichever way. So the tech for me is neutral and can be used for, and I like your line because that's the one I use, good, bad, and ugly purposes. Right? It is not the tech itself that's doing that. So again, it's either bad actors who are pushing a certain line for a reason to divide, or equally people are just unaware. There are a lot of really good people out there who just, and I don't think it's very helpful to throw around these kind of binaries saying anything to do with crypto is about centralization, digital enslavement, it's bad, when they haven't understood what it is. I've got no issue I've absolutely got no issue with someone saying it's not for me and I'm not a fan of it. I'm neutral. I'm not trying here to convince anybody get in, get out. But when you understand what it is, you wouldn't be saying that. And often, as I think I'm sure we'll touch on, some people have done some quite funny things and said things, really slating stuff that they are unaware they're using themselves and benefiting from. And I'm sure we'll touch on that because whenever I've had, and I don't get much kickback in my talks when I do them in person, because most people, if you come to a talk, you're open and curious and you hear all the sides I'm giving. It's often when I advertise a talk, somebody will come in and just say on a group, this is just about digital slavery, it's evil. Often my issue is you should come to that talk, come and discuss. You'll realize that I'm not pushing it, I'm not promoting it. You'll understand all the different nuances to it, and we'll have a great discussion. And I'm absolutely respect you wanting to leave and say, crypto's not for me. Because sometimes I get people come to my talk, they then are clear to then go, I know what it is, and I still don't need to get involved with it. Brilliant. That's empowering in itself. So again, education on all these topics down is so important, like it is with everything. Because when we don't understand, we're lost, aren't we?
Yeah,
we don't know where we are.
That's the important thing is gaining that awareness, because what I've observed, and we hosted a webinar on this last week, and we're doing a repeat version this week actually, called "How to Thrive in Uncertainty."
Yeah.
What I've observed is when there is what they call FUD in the world, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, it drives us to extremes, or it can drive us to extremes. To touch on your point, I actually made this point explicitly within the webinar. Is what that leads to is these binaries, but not only binaries, usually binary extremes. So we go. Yeah. Right now, people are either going down the kind of technophile route, which means that they think that technology is the solution to everything. And we're seeing this underpinned within the kind of culture. We're seeing it within the kind of transhumanist movement. This idea that technology can save us. Yeah. On the flip side, you have this almost paleophile approach, which is we want to completely unplug from technology, disconnect from digital, and go back to kind of living off the land. And there are people who live at both of those extremes and have strong beliefs that those are the ways forward. But for most of us, there's something in between. And there's a lot of people in our community who would like to have more of a life outside of digital. But the reality is, when we're discussing it, we're usually discussing it on a digital platform. So we don't have many that have actually completely unplugged, but they may have a desire to live a less of a digital life. But my point is really, rather than the nuances of that discussion, is that when we're in these environments of fear and uncertainty, we get driven to these extremes. And unfortunately, those extreme perspectives can often be louder than the kind of nuance and the complexity of everything in between.
Yeah, they have more effect. They've got more power because they're more exciting either side, and there's more energy to them. Whereas the real nuance takes more work. So of course the easy option is to say, I'm anti this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time understanding it, going to talks, thinking about it. It takes energy. It's like the real something takes a lot of effort. It's much easier to grab onto some viewpoint that you think you like, you don't really know. And rather than spend that time, really learn and then go from there. And I'm totally with that. And I've always said this, I'd love to be living in the tropics and trading mangoes. Part of my involvement is to get more towards that area. So it's not me. I'm absolutely not one of these digital guys that loves tech, but I like to understand the role it's playing. And that's why, we used it in the title of the course, but for me, navigating is such an important word. Whether it's crypto or finance or almost everything in our journey from now on, how can we navigate through what's coming so that we can thrive? And there are ways, but it takes work and it takes, navigation, which means moving, and shifting as you learn more. And I'm ready to adapt and be agile and change my mind anytime. So not being, again, getting stuck in a binary doesn't really leave you open to that journey,
Yeah, you get caught.
And you learn. You learn from getting involved and then pulling back and seeing what works for you. And which is why I always say, whatever you're going to do, whether it's in crypto or in finance, you've got to do what resonates with you. That's what will work best. So even if crypto, you understand it, but it still doesn't speak to you, and you're like, I don't really want it, I think, then it's not, absolutely doesn't resonate with you. But there will be other things you can navigate into that resonate with you. So, but finding out is going to help you. So always like getting more data points. The more you can learn, the more, I always like Tony Robbins, I don't like all this stuff, but he was great at saying, the successful people are people who, they don't take better decisions, they take more decisions. And that does two things. It makes you, it builds the muscle of taking decisions. And it also, by taking more, you learn more, rather than being paralyzed and taking none or being stuck. So yeah, the other thing the binaries do on the bigger trend, and I've said it a lot, is they can paralyze at both ends of the spectrum. So if we leave up the sides of crypto and finance, look at the last 2 years where you get the extreme hopium side and the extreme fear porn side, both of which can lead to inaction. On the extreme hopium side is, Matt Hancock's going to be arrested. It's all going to come down next week. And on the fear porn side, we're all going to be rounded up in FEMA camps by the end of the week. Neither are true, but they both can lead to inaction, which is one side being, well, it's going to be sorted. Good things are happening. We're on the brink of, Nuremberg 2.0, whatever, Rainer Fulmich's kind of line of thinking, or we're absolutely screwed and nothing we can do. Whereas neither for me are true, and they were never going to be true. And where can we find the third way, which is we've got to be aware of all these things, but we can take action and move forward. Yeah.
Those two binaries, those two polarities, in many ways, they are the things that disempower us. And
totally.
The problem and the solution is always outside of ourselves. And I think,
exactly.
As we've worked together, what I've learned is that whilst the subject matter and the vehicle might be digital assets and crypto, underpinning all of it, what you're really sharing is sovereignty and
totally,
and how,
which is why
taking
I like
that responsibility back.
Totally, which is why I like speaking. And I said it's an organic journey. I never planned to speak about finance and crypto. I planned to speak about raw food and juicing when I got back to the UK and was shifting away from my old life in the Alps. But interestingly, like you said, what I've so enjoyed is the sort of core mindset and ethos is universal. So yes, this is the vehicle for that to come through, but the message and the real thing is about discernment, empowerment, mindset, education, and you can fit that to anything, and it's critically important in this next phase. And sometimes I get accused of being negative because I do, I kind of feel like for all my years of research, I do see that the system isn't about to come down next week or into, this is a long process. But in that, I'm equally counter that with, I don't think we're doomed either, right? And I think people think, oh my God, because I'm not relying on it coming down for me to thrive, my community to thrive, people who want to work with me, people who want to do community, being almost that's kind of the old world of victim mentality, which is A, everybody has to wake up for it to be all right for us. B, the power structure has to crumble for it's all right to us. That is waiting for something, as you said, Dan, for something outside of ourselves to happen for us to be all right. Now, I would argue, this kind of tyranny and stuff has been going on for so long. There have always been people who've managed to thrive and do good stuff regardless, because they were on their path clear. So that's really energy. And I did see your chat last week where you touched on FTX and the bigger sort of spectrum of that, which is I'm totally in tune with that, which is we can, but it's down to us. And we've got to make the effort and make the moves, and this is huge opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, with that view of what you've shared, this awareness which leads to to me leads to empowerment, and then and that empowerment leaves us with options.
Yeah.
And what happens is when people feel shut down or disempowered, they don't see options. They don't necessarily see opportunity. And again, on the webinar I've just done, I talk about the psychology and the biology of why that happens, and how it actually, the neurochemistry in our body actually prevents us from seeing those opportunities.
Yeah.
And again, it's a function of this, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which I think is compounded by a lot of the myths that are in the marketplace. And those myths can then prevent us from actually getting the education and the awareness that we need to make an informed decision, either to take a certain action or otherwise. Like you said, you know, even if you become informed, you still say, you know what, it's not my thing.
Totally.
So what I'd like to do is touch upon some of those myths as part of our conversation. Some of those things actually become barriers to people actually even embracing a journey of learning. But before we do that, you know, you mentioned the episode I did regarding FTX. Yeah, I think that's been a hugely topical conversation in the marketplace. You know, a lot of people talking about how it's a, you know, false flag operation, or it's a blatant step towards enabling regulation, which gives all the power back to the, you know, the big money organizations. What's your take on FTX and what it all means? And, you know, fascinatingly enough, you predicted that there would be an event at that specific time, which is manifested exactly as you predicted. So tell us a little bit about what your foresight there and your interpretation of recent events.
Yeah, and obviously, I didn't predict it because I'm a seer or a sage, Dan. But again, from education of you know, and obviously, I had a lot of people contact me, you know, post FTX, knowing I'm involved in crypto. You know, how do I feel about crypto now? And here's the point, which also underpins all this about getting empowered, is I feel absolutely the same. I feel completely unchanged, and that's because I've got, you know, I'm educated in that area and I understand what's going on, and so none of it's a surprise to me. You know, so that's where getting educated and seeing these things for what they are is so important, because then you're not a victim of them. You're not being pulled around by them. You know, so because they're always good. This theatre's never going to stop. You know, life's never going to stop coming. You've never got, you know, the kind of what somebody I know likes to call them the mischief gang rather than the elite. You know, they're never going to stop throwing stuff at you. But when can you get grounded so that you're not pulled around by it too much? It can affect you at times, but can you get grounded? So yeah, the FTX thing is just a continuation of a roadmap that I've been talking about for the last couple of years, really, which is this is everything that, you know, expected to happen, which is the kind of controlled demolition of the crypto market as it was before, the kind of Wild West crypto market, because they're in the middle of trying to take control as much of it as they possibly can, right? So interestingly, you know, FTX has all the hallmarks of a ritual, but then the reason I was able to call that date out, which was the 8th of November, saying I expect something, you know, potentially going to happen then, is because it was a lunar eclipse. Okay, and if we look back in the last year, since this downtrend in the crypto market, this is our third liquidation event on a full lunar eclipse since last December. Okay, so we started on December the 4th, when the WHO pulled out their Omicron announcement, which crashed the markets. Okay, so that was the beginning. We then had another pair of eclipses in May, which is when we had the lunar ritual, which I talk about in the Navigating Digital Assets course. Another ritual eclipse taking down Luna, which was challenging the US dollar, a kind of freedom-based crypto project, which got destroyed by Wall Street, again, around that lunar eclipse. So that brought us forward. I knew we had another full pair of eclipses, and the full lunar eclipse there, always on my calendar, on the 8th of November. And so if this was an organic process that was happening, I'd expect, okay, it could have gone down. The fact that it went down exactly again on the full eclipse, just absolutely for me is the confirmation of everything I thought about it already, which is this is another ritual. This was always going to happen at that time. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody involved is in on this ritual, but often what happens is, you know, it's allowed to happen. I think people have looked at FTX, the kind of people involved in it, lots of insiders. You know, this guy was involved with Gary Gensler from the Security Exchange Commission. So they were aware of what FTX was, in my view, from day one. And often what happens is it's multifaceted. It exists for a reason, as we know, lots of money laundering went through it, had all sorts of reasons. But it's built up to be destroyed for a purpose. And the timing was so critical. So what we had straight after that was exactly that, all the clamour for the regulation, which was always in the roadmap. They just need excuses to bring it in faster and quicker. So again, it's all problem, reaction, solution, as always. So FTX was absolutely that. Again, and yeah, another ritual, and again, how powerful it was. They always leverage this astrology because they know they're doing powerful things to get a lot of news out there, and astrology just amplifies that. They can use that, and I really like makes me think of the quote by J.P. Morgan, who other people will be aware is part of banking dynasties. He said, quite clearly, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do, right? And to link into crypto, J.P. Morgan, his banking dynasty, family and business are some of the people who are heavily involved in reorganizing the crypto market. J.P. Morgan are possibly one of the companies that will be taking over Celsius, which collapsed after Luna collapsed. So again, that's DeFi, decentralized finance, being systematically destroyed by Wall Street to then be bought up and controlled by them. Okay, so from my studying of these kind of people and how they work, they're not very creative, right? The dark forces, the dark magicians, whatever you want to call them, they're not creative. That's really on the light side, much more creation. But what they're very good at is destroying things. So I would posit that a lot of what's happened in this space is they've allowed talented, creative people to create solutions like Celsius, decentralized finance, but they come in and destroy it and then take it off them and control it. So that's often the modus operandi that happens. You think about people like Tesla, they can support these people, allow it to happen, but then they're very efficient. They're not creative, not positive. They're very efficient at going and destroying on certain dates and doing what they want to do. So yeah, FTX had a huge around the market. I know people who started to come around to crypto and seeing the power in terms of investment point of view, who suddenly went, oh no, I'm scared now. And of course, what's so interesting about it is obviously nobody I know who I speak to and is aware lost any money in this. But the mainstream view is everybody in crypto has lost a lot of money. Okay, and it comes back to the tenets I talk about in the course. Everything is the only people that had lost money was they were holding assets on an exchange, FTX, which is a third-party hand, so that's not sovereign. They were leaving your asset for somebody else, or they were invested in FTT, which was FTX's token, which isn't a solid investment because it's a government's token on exchange. So there aren't many people I knew who thought that's a great investment. So again, the mainstream view, because you're not educated, is just like everyone in crypto just lost all their money. It's terrifying. Where, of course, only a very few people, and not people who invest in solid assets, who had them in their self-custody. And you see how quickly the headlines got out there. And, of course, it brought on the whole kind of, I saw the Economist cover, which is often used to really put out messages, the death of crypto, it's all over. So retail people who aren't educated about what's going on are understandably terrified. And the other interesting aspect of it, which links into CBDCs, is as people who've done my course understand, CBDCs are not crypto per se. They are, a centralized, new fiat currency built on the blockchain. But what we saw from the collapse of FTX was suddenly, saw an amazing quote, I've got it here somewhere, from John Cunliffe, from, careful with how I pronounce it, from the Bank of England. He told the truth in his first statement, saying, well, it's not really linked. The collapse of FTX has nothing to do with, our central bank digital currency plans. But then he went back on that a few days later, saying, I think I'm getting a lot of comments saying this should be something that makes us think more about our central bank digital currency and getting that in, because FTX is emblematic of these new technologies. And again, this just shows how much that's using the narrative. It's absolutely not connected at all. I mean, literally with FTX, people sort of mesh up, say that's crypto. Literally, you've got some bad actors running a dodgy financial scam and really behaving as our legacy banks do, which is not having the funds in there that exist.
Yes.
So in a sense, to link that to the technology is absolute nonsense. Absolutely. And also to link, but obviously that's how it works in the mainstream, which is it doesn't, as we know, it doesn't need to be congruent and make sense. It just needs to have that power, which is suddenly in the mainstream. Crypto as it is, bad, terrifying, losing your money. Government working on some good crypto for us. It's completely not really linked, but of course in that kind of mainstream narrative, they tied it all together. So we had all those stories coming out, plus a load of stuff coming from the G20. Suddenly, a few days later, the G20 have released a paper about the regulation of the digital asset space. So again, the timing is all too convenient, and shows really that it's a ritual, that they knew it was going to come down this day, and they built it to destroy it. And obviously, people like SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, doesn't mean he's in on it fully. But often these minions are used. They don't exactly know what they're fully being used for, but they are disposable, be allowed to do their thing. They're handled a certain way. And of course, that bank run, which is all it was on FTX, was a bank run. You know, them leaking rumours that they haven't got the funds, get everybody to go in. That's how bank runs happen.
Yep.
So yeah, to sum up, yeah, absolutely. It's the 9/11, it's the Building 7 collapse. You build it, bring it down, and you've got all this narrative to work with. And yeah, it scared a lot of people, you know, and a lot of people who aren't empowered, who don't really understand the space, you know, with the headlines of crypto. You know, I saw a comment on a video. I wondered even what somebody said. Who would be daft enough in crypto? It's just you're guaranteed to lose your money. You know, here's the proof. You know,
it just validates people's beliefs that they already hold, and that's the risk, because your point there around the power in itself, the power anything has, you know, the power that crypto has, or the power that decentralized finance has, is really to a degree is grounded in the technology, but more so it's grounded in the belief that one has in the technology, which is all about a belief is created by our perception. You know, so if we believe that crypto is over and that's it, and this particular event reinforces that perception, then that's what we continue to believe, but even more strongly. And again, having that sovereignty to actually step back and say, well, actually, what else could this mean? Because I was having a conversation actually with a new friend of mine who I met through my local gym. He's a former world champion mixed martial artist. He has invested a lot of money in crypto in the last few years. He's personal friends with Andrew Tate. You know, he shared all kinds of stories about their shared investments. And he's doubling down right now. You know, he says, whilst the rest of the market is in fear, successful people go the opposite direction. And he's doubling down. And I said, well, many are talking about regulation being the death of all this. Are you worried about that? And he said, no, this is actually going to make it even more vibrant, because this is what they want.
Totally. And again, their use of something else come to mind. Their use of these kind of, for the mainstream, you know, people. They used Tom Brady, who's a massive, you know, they've heard of NFL star in the States, one of the biggest sports stars, you know, married to a supermodel. So they were the kind of poster child of FTX. They apparently put all their money in, whether they did or not. You see what I mean? And it's the power that has on the masses, which is one of our heroes. He went all big, you know, publicly said, I'm backing FTX. I put all my money in there. He's lost it all. So again, it's so powerful. And you're absolutely right. You know, nothing. What's so funny is that these headlines of, you know, the end of crypto, the whole drawdown the crypto market in this bear market hasn't even reached the heights, you know, or the lows of the previous two. So again, this narrative of it's absolute Armageddon, it's all dead. Well, Bitcoin is, you know, I think down 77%, 78% from its all-time high. In the previous bear markets, it went down over 80. So we're not even at that level.
Yes.
Right? So again, these are natural cycles playing out. You know, the bull and bear markets are happening naturally as well as being manipulated. But these are natural cycles happening anyway. But they can leverage all the fear that's there, you know, really. And that's where, again, if you get educated about the market cycles, the manipulation, you can be free of all that fuss. You know, again, this is the empowerment side down, isn't it? Where, you know, nothing has changed. I don't wake up with FTX, my emotions, my mood. And I want to empower people that if you are involved, to get to a space where you're not pulled around, because otherwise you're always going to be a victim of the theatre, you know, and having strong conviction, whatever you're doing, means that you are kind of, you know, whether it's did the Omicron announcement scare us more than, no, because we were already grounded in reality of what's going on. And again, so FTX was the Omicron of crypto, you know, things were bad. Oh my God, it's got a lot worse. Well, we knew before what was happening and we still know what's happening. So again, education is what can empower you and stop you being pulled around by the theatre show, because that's what it's there to do. And so much of it is tyranny by consent, right? So the idea they do want to shake a lot of people and get out of the market, they can't force everybody to actively sell, as they couldn't force everybody to actually take a vaccine, right? But they're engineering that the majority will do it themselves. So you might have a lot of people, not many at this stage, but still have people who held positions in crypto who may have sold out of a loss, but who sold out? the person themselves. That was their own choice. They didn't get forced to do it, but they got manipulated by the spells, the rituals, the media. So again, getting that core empowerment, understanding where you are and what's going on. I remember going back to Deborah, she was quite taken aback with the first call I did and talked about these rituals and, the astrology and how powerful. But I shine a light on it because actually it loses its power, right? So rather than be like, oh my God, they're all powerful, they can do that. It's like seeing the magician. Well, I've seen the trick. I know what the trick is. You haven't got the power over me anymore. I can see what trick you're playing. I can be interested. So Dan, that's where FTX, I'm interested in it. I'm interested in what happens in the market, but I'm not a victim of it. I'm not being manipulated by it. And that's the crucial difference, I think.
I think it's an important thing to say. And I also thank you for saying the piece around the astrology, because I know some people might be watching this. If they've attended from our community, they've been to the financial reset event, you've talked about the stuff. Even then, it might still be too esoteric for some people. But, people might be thinking, Sam, I was with you until you started talking about the moon cycles. You've lost me now. And I think, whether you take it or leave it, it's important that there are other ways of seeing things. And, there are plenty of organizations that operate openly in a ritualistic fashion.
Totally. And I think there's enough evidence without going that. I obviously, my long-term research knows
yes, you've been in the game.
Plays a huge role in all this, but, I'm not making it called purely on the lunar eclipse, but that, for me, it's just extra confirmation, the numerology and the astrology. And again, quite a coincidence, even if you don't believe it, that we've had 3 market collapses on liquidations on 3 eclipses in a row. Right?
Well, certainly will, I'm sure, make people think differently. Now, I think one of the biggest concerns that people have, and I know you've commented on, is this the end of the crypto? Would you say then you're very confident that this is not the end of crypto?
Absolutely. Well, again, I think the comparison with the dot-com bubble is really interesting. Okay, So when the dot-com bubble burst, in the dot-com era, 2000, 2001 was, pioneering beginning of email. Where's this going to go? And again, that was the bubble was built on speculation, as a lot of markets are at that time. So when the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, it dropped. Most companies dropped, 90% plus. Amazon, who's a giant today, lost 95% of their value. And 90% of things in those kind of when speculative bubbles burst, and also you go into bear markets, generally, a lot of projects that had no utility, had no real cash flow, they disappear. Okay? So my sort of, if you make that comparison, was the internet over when the dot-com bubble burst?
Just getting started.
Just getting started.
Yeah.
So that's, again, the fundamentals of trying to separate the technology and the developments from market sentiment and liquidity. Okay? Because the crypto market, again, there's so many confusing things I'd like to shine a light on. When people say what's happening to crypto, almost that question doesn't make sense. Because it's a huge, diverse, massive, variety of assets and tokenized technologies. So even just saying what's happening in crypto is a non-question. Okay, the blockchain is huge. So nothing has happened fundamentally to the tech or what's happening, and actually it's been progressing at an unbelievable rate. A lot of people argue faster than the internet was progressing, despite the market being down 80 plus %. Or so you could have an asset. If we sat on an asset that is 95% down from where it was in November, and that same company who controls the asset, that token, has been making unbelievable strides in the last 6 months. Their business is absolutely good. It's nothing to do with it at this stage. It's purely, market sentiment where we are. So absolutely, is this the end? No, and that gets said at every bear market. This is the end. This is the end. It's going to go away. Doesn't mean that 90% of what's in the market, it can be the beginning of the end of them. And that is both natural, because 90% of the market is rubbish, pure rubbish. It has no utility. And what happens is, I want to always say this, it's both, Dan, I've said it to you in the talks, it's both manipulation and organic stuff.
Yes.
It's a complete combination. Again, don't get stuck in the binary. Some people go, it's all completely controlled, or it's both.
Yeah.
So what happens is when we've moved into this quantitative, tightening, okay, the money prints have gone off. A lot of zombie companies get exposed during this time, because when money was easy to borrow, there's loads of money sloshing around the market. They can survive and look all right. So it's really these kind of periods where the money prints are off, interest rates are high. These companies can't get hold of cheap money. So much stuff is getting found out, And that's not all manipulation. A lot of that stuff is genuine. That these are, companies that aren't functioning, aren't meant to make it. So that's a huge part of this process, which is all natural and is all healthy, really, for the blockchain future of where it's going. So absolutely not. It's the beginning.
Yeah, the comparison to the .com era is so pertinent because the .com crash, again, it flushed out a lot of the kind of pretenders, and again, that word utility is important. They didn't actually have any long-term practical application. They were speculators, or they were chancers, trying to ride the wave. And there's a lot of that. Again, it's market forces that are driving that.
Totally.
Opportunism,
all these companies jumping on these bandwagons. So again, blockchain was big, crypto. There's some genuine ones trying stuff. There's also a load of charlatans jumping on their bandwagon because there's liquidity knocking. Wherever there's money, I won't say liquidity, I think money. Wherever there's money going on, there are people jumping in, which is why a lot of the scams appear and a lot of the multi-level marketing scams. Because in a rising market, there's money floating around. They can lend out stuff, pay some yields. Look at them all disappear. And a lot of these are parasite companies who are just scams. So good riddance to them. But they all, all the stuff they were promising, they can't do it now because they haven't got access to free money or lots of money sloshing on the market. So, it is. There's a lot of natural, a lot of natural stuff just happening, and a lot of zombie companies being found out and going bust. And again, that's where utility is actually key. If you invest in something that has no point to it, then it probably won't survive. But I think utility is everything.
Yeah, I mean, during the .com crash, even the likes of Apple and Amazon, they were born during this era. They took losses.
90% plus, and people who sold out, got scared out. Understandably, didn't understand where things were going. That this was thought it's over, and a lot of those people took a loss. I think Amazon has been restructured because I think at that time it went from sort of $130 odd to $6. People took a loss. I'm out. I want to protect what I've got. Of course, the run from there over the next 10, 20 years, extraordinary. Yeah. So the same will happen in the blockchain tech sector, which is what the crypto market as a whole. Yes. But 90% plus of what exists today will not make it.
Yes, I think the comparison to the .com is useful for what we've discussed, but it's also useful because if you start to, I think the word crypto, people think about currency and and this is where all the fears come in, and I'd like to talk about some of those fears. The central bank digital currencies. People are saying this is laying the groundwork for central bank digital currencies, which actually technologically is true. But it's also distinct from when you talk about the projects. Those projects have utility. Some of them have nothing at all to do with currency. They have nothing to do.
Which is why cryptocurrency is the misnomer. Which is I always try and reframe that word cryptocurrency. That's why look at the core cycle. I've talked about digital assets, and that's for a reason. It's to get away from this mindset of these are pure currencies. There are pure currencies within there, but again, a lot of these things are tech products. These are tech solutions for the future world. And again, always give that caveat for the good, the bad, and the ugly. The CBDC is actually using blockchain technology as the baseline tech of the future. And here's the thing again about intention, Dan. I think, a lot of people ask, are CBDCs inevitable, whatever. They are for me, not purely because, the Michigan are going to get their way, but also because this tech is far superior. And if we had nobody nefarious, in high places controlling it, we absolutely should move what we have digitally already, which is most of our money is digital form anyway. There's only about 7% cash in the world. We absolutely would benefit from moving on to the blockchain because it's far superior tech. It's cheaper, faster, less problematic, less manipulable. So it's fabulous. But so the tech is not the issue. It's the fact that it's top-down smart contracts that are going to be programmed, for our greater good, that we don't have a say in. That's the issue with it. It's not the tech itself. So again, you could, as we've discussed before, we could use blockchain with each other, maintain our privacy, agree on contracts with each other, and that's a great use of a smart contract. We're both consenting, Dan, and we're saying we want that. It works for both of us. We're happy. But what we're looking at is a top-down, centrally controlled, centrally dictated, in a sense, a fiat currency as it is today, but with all these other aspects that they can use, block to put on top of it. So,
there's lots of really important points there. So, firstly, the central bank digital currency. So, I think we both acknowledge that the technology has enabled that, but I also think the when people think about central bank digital currencies, they think about it in the extremist form, in the sense that the programmable aspect, where, and again, central bank digital currencies, do I think they're inevitable? I think they are. I think they are inevitable. But I agree with you that I think the technology is far superior to the current banking, the digital banking system.
And they have many qualities that will be better, in terms of it cuts out a lot of parasite middlemen. All those kind of institutions that exist to be middlemen, move money. It really is a much more efficient system in terms of speed, costs, and all sorts. But it is the programmable aspect.
Yes,
from that
and the centralization of it, which actually, at its core, Bitcoin of its origin and what's evolved from there was born to be decentralized. It was actually. I know there's different views on who started Bitcoin and where it all came from, but if you take that to one side and think about the premise,
it is decentralized. And it's an asset that the rules of the game. So the rules of the game are set, and that's why Bitcoin stands alone. That's why within crypto, even Bitcoin absolutely stands alone, and it almost has to be viewed in its own right. And again, you talk about supply, which is why Bitcoin's so different. The supply is absolutely hard code limited, whereas any of your CBDCs will just be like your fiat currency today in terms of the supply is completely controlled, by essentially exactly by central banks and government.
Yes, and I think the fears around what central bank digital currencies could become, which I share, that kind of social credit type system, they are baked into the technology. That is a hard fact. But again, it's not an inevitability.
No, I like the way you've said that, because it's almost like it's a two-part question. I think they're inevitable, partly because I also see that they're far, far more further down the road than would be told in the mainstream. So again, I go back to COVID comparison. Were the vaccines ready earlier than most people thought? Was that? A lot of this to me is that the roadmap has already been laid out. What you're seeing in the mainstream is just the layup for it. So that's part of my reason thinking it's inevitable. It's not because I think it's a lot closer, and I think they are pretty much ready. But the other side to it is I don't see all the things they can do with it as inevitable. Because it's not going to be overnight. They're not going to arrive overnight as social credit score, programmable, you're completely trapped. It will be a road to get there. And again, that does depend on people's behavior, how much pushback. So I don't view that full dystopia as inevitable. I know that's where, they wanted things to go. But the pure tech on its own can be used in a neutral fashion.
Exactly. I agree. And
that's important to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think there is a counterculture now emerging that is going to strongly push back on those eventualities that people are most afraid about with the centralization and the social. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I think there is a growing momentum towards standing against those types of applications, and I think that's something that's emerging. But I think the other thing that people are concerned about, and again, it's a very valid concern, is the privacy element, because at the moment. And we think our money is private right now. Well, if you're using digital banking, your bank can view your activities, and actually the government can actually inspect your banking activities. Totally, so that's all currently possible. But I understand that people are equally afraid that by having a centralized digital pound, for instance, is that now that government has greater visibility over over how you use your money. And I think, again, that's where it brings out the comparison with cash. And we could talk about cash and some of the fears around, some of the idea that cash is really king, because I think cash, again, people don't realize that cash has its own problems. But could you speak about the privacy element when it comes to digital assets?
It's an interesting one. I mean, there are, and you're absolutely right that the CBDC does give them that extra level of, spyware, essentially. Now, within crypto, again, this is a really big, nuanced discussion, because a lot of people think crypto is private. Again, it's open source blockchain, most of it. So even if you have your Bitcoin wallet address, somebody can go and look at how much Bitcoin is in there. Okay, so that's where you see a lot of this move towards, privacy coins, particularly in the freedom movement. Things like Monero, private chain, which are, have got amazing tech in, which does protect, and kind of scramble the transactions, so you're not sure where it's gone. So that is an area of crypto that's obviously burgeoning in the freedom movement. What its future is going to look like, who knows? Will it be a complete black market? Who knows? Again, it's almost like within crypto, there's so many different things going on there. It's also like Bitcoin is Bitcoin. There are kind of solid investments, and there are kind of like, rebel currencies that are privacy. They're all, some of the people set portfolios, they're all completely kind of separate areas within this kind of crypto space.
Yes. Can I just say something on this? Because I think this is an important point, because the last couple of years with the COVID conversation has spawned a worldwide freedom movement. I think it's woken people up to the fact that freedoms, not just during the course of COVID, but actually there's an underlying trajectory that is moving us away from freedom and towards other things like safetyism or greater centralized control. And this has been a huge awakening for a lot of people. However, my experience of crypto or digital assets, the whole market has been born out of digital freedom. Most people I know that are long-term advocates of what crypto and Bitcoin has always been from all this crypto anarchic, freedom fighting, liberating from government control. Like to me, that's the underlying sentiment that has been behind a lot of this stuff. But I think a lot of people don't recognize that a lot of these projects, a lot of this, the market is actually driven by the desire for greater freedom and limited government control.
Absolutely, and that's where Bitcoin does stand alone as it's decentralized, and it's about not having state intermediaries or third party intermediaries. So that point, I always tell that story about the guy who was in Russia when it all kicked off and they shut down the SWIFT system. He didn't shut down the ATMs. His bank was down, and you look at that, the legacy bank system has really locked him out of where he's living jurisdiction. But because he had Bitcoin in a wallet, he is then able to transact peer-to-peer, and the permission is coming from all the people across the world who are securing the Bitcoin network, rather than an authority saying what and that you are outside. Once you're in that crypto space, you're outside jurisdiction. Dan, I think that's really important. Whereas when you've got a bank account and you're Russian or say you're British, we are in that jurisdiction. When you're on the blockchain, saying your Bitcoin wallet, you are nowhere and everywhere. So it's irrelevant who you were, where you are. So there's always going to be somebody who's going to validate that transaction going through, regardless of whether somebody's judged that we can't allow Russians to trade or Brits to trade or unvaccinated to trade. That's what's really powerful about it, and that decentralized freedom aspect. That no one's playing around with the supply of it, and equally that no one's getting in the way of these transactions going through. And the reason Bitcoin is so special is that because this is kind of, people view Bitcoin as clunky and kind of old tech, because it's now, how old is it? Over 10 years old, and things have moved on enormously. But part of the beauty of its simplicity is that it doesn't take much computing power for individuals to secure the Bitcoin network. So that kind of, I don't want to get too technical to the lay audience, and I'm not a real techie guy either, but understanding that it's kind of clunkiness, slowness is what makes it so decentralized. Because it means that should you take out everybody, there's still one man standing in Kazakhstan who's securing the network. He's going to have the compute power to do it. Whereas with things, so a lot of people though, it's very limited Bitcoin, don't like it. But if you build a lot more stuff on these blockchains and you need a lot more computing power to secure the networks, then it favors bigger groups with more computing power. So I won't get too technical, but there's something in Bitcoin simplicity, which is why it's clunky and old, but that's what makes it so decentralized and so attractive to people.
Thanks, Sam. I think this also raises a couple of additional fears that people have. So, and it's linked to where the distributed system works. So obviously, firstly, people might point to China and the intervention that China has had within the crypto market and Bitcoin, and how they've taken this stronghold over crypto and they've been able to intervene in the market. So that would be one fear, and people would be asking, well, what about other regional governments? Or national governments, could they do the same? So that's number one. But then the second element to that is then what I hear a lot is, well, what if they turn the internet off? What if the internet goes down? And firstly, again, on the latter point, well, with digital banking right now, the same is true. And whilst there are, the value of cash would prevent part of those problems, the reality is these days, even if you are paying with cash, the vendor that you're paying, their systems are usually wired into the internet. So even if you have the cash to pay, most shops you'll go to, even if they take cash, which is decreasing in number, sadly, even if they do take cash, their EPOS systems, their electronic payment systems, are usually grounded in the internet. And you'll find if the internet goes down, those shops won't be trading anyway. That's the hard reality.
if the internet goes down, we're in a whole different ball game. Where I always, for example, if the internet goes down, the last thing I'm worried about is my digital assets. Because at that stage, which is why I don't believe it will. It's the control structure for me. So yeah, it's kind of like if you get into apocalyptic what ifs, then those apocalyptic what ifs they affect everything. We're in a whole different space where we've got to look at different priorities. So it kind of ends that conversation for me.
Yes.
In a way, it's kind of like in terms of trying to stop a few million people transacting Bitcoin, pull the whole plug on the world internet is kind of pretty extreme. And I just don't think it's interesting. I think it's important to realize that yes, a lot of freedom-minded people are in Bitcoin for that reason. Also, a load of very unfree-minded people understand its value. The big boys are all in it.
Yep.
Okay, so again, it's the idea. I think some people think that the crypto space is a purely rebellious space that they're going to crush. I think that's an important thing to understand. That KPMG, one of the biggest mainstream accounting firms in the world, have Bitcoin and Ethereum on their balance sheet.
Yes.
So that, they're not doing that because they think, oh my God, we got to get something outside the system. Whatever they are investing in the future baseline tech of the world. So, and want to have a stake in it. So it's important to understand there is freedom and rebellion in there, but this is a real mainstream space as well.
Yes, and I think again it goes back to that misnomer that it's purely currency based.
Totally.
That's the illusion, and it's like if you trade the stock market and you're investing in tech companies, it's to me it's not a direct comparison, but there's enough comparison. You could be investing in future tech, in the media industry. I mean, there's a whole world being built on Web3 in the media space, which I'm becoming more and more familiar with. Same with like property. Property companies now transacting property deeds via tokenized contracts. There's a whole wave of digital applications that follow,
and some really good decentralized aspects to it. I mean, I'm invested in a real grassroots copper mining operation, right? And it's tokenized. And it's much more direct. It's cut out the middlemen, the parasites, bankers. The wealth is going much more direct to the people on the ground. It's ethical. So there are really extraordinary use cases going on in decentralized, space. And so it is a move to decentralization. Positive. It's just that the control structure always want to try and control what they can and use it for their way. The whole spectrum is going to exist in it. No question. And then again, the idea that it's going to be totally destroyed by by that crew, then why are they busy buying it up off people at the moment? I mean, we get into on-chain and analytics, we can see what the big people are doing. It's not. I think it's important to get that mindset. I think you do get people in the kind of free movement who are new to all this. Think it's just some rebel space that I run to, but it's so dangerous and they're going to destroy it. I think that's why again it comes back to education, isn't it, Dan? Understand what it is and what is this space, and then that will give you a complete different view of it, and then you can decide how you want to be involved with it, if at all.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And the last big kind of concern I have is around people who talk about cash and cash is king. And I can understand why people would think about that, because again, it's the ability to transact with total anonymous anonymity. Your cash can't be traced like a digital transaction can. So I understand that. But I'd interest in your comments, because again, if we look at what's happened in the value of the currency, the British pound, for instance, over the last few months, with all the political turmoil, the ups and downs, the value of the pound is not under your control. And the reality is the fact that it's got a deceased notable on the front, which a lot of people in this community, I find it interesting how a lot of people with the changes in the monarchy over recent weeks. And again, I'm not here to say one thing or the other with the monarchy, or I don't care what you think about the monarchy. But the fact is that there is a deceased notable on the front. It is it is issued by a central bank, and that for me says that it's not as liberating as one may think. So what's your take on cash?
Well, I absolutely agree, Dan. And there is this interesting, irony of I completely support the privacy of the transaction. So in terms of transacting in that level of privacy, I absolutely. So I support, this is why I'm saying I'm not pro-digital. It's not about being pro cash or pro crypto, just knowing what they all are. But of course, like you said, the irony in it is this is the most centralized, the most controlled. This is almost like saying they're, the people I'm happy with. I'm putting on the pedestal their piece of paper, which fiat currency by decree, given that is backed by absolutely nothing. Okay, that's really important. Fiat currency is backed by nothing. Since we came off the gold standard in 73, this asset, so it absolutely has no worth. And again, you get people go, well, there's no worth to Bitcoin, and they're lording cash. Well, there's absolutely no worth to your cash, So it absolutely is a great means of just transacting, whatever. But in terms of asset and wealth, you are absolutely being robbed daily in it. So the dollar, talk about the dollar because it's a reserve currency of the world, but it goes to all these currencies. Since its inception of the modern dollar, it is down 98%. Okay, it's lost 98% of its value. That's going to continue. You're in a chart that's never going the other way. You're never going to gain some value sat in that. So it's always important to view as absolutely cash in terms of short-term transacting, amazing. In terms of asset, it's not an asset. It's if you're storing your wealth in that, then you're giving all your power away to basically being robbed through money printing. In the last 2 years, people have lost huge amounts of wealth by sitting in cash. So, yeah, I do have an issue with that. Again, it's a binary idea. Cash is king. Worship. I completely support the keeping cash and the privacy. I'm totally with that. But I also see the issues with it, Dan, which is if you're sat in cash. And here's another thing to consider. When we consider, no one can say exactly how the switch is going to play out. But potentially the other aspect of sitting in, if you sit in cash, again, I'm for cash in terms of transacting short term. If you sit in cash, as in that's where my wealth is, that's a tool to transact privately. But equally, tomorrow, it can be deemed to be no longer legal tender.
Yes.
So in terms of an asset, in terms of where to store your wealth, that is a high risk strategy because literally they can say, well, and maybe to pull some of the cash back into the system to try and get black money off the streets, to try and get everything full switch over. They can start doing that, which is any notes before this date no longer, and you've got to bank it. And you may, if we get a switch over to CBDC, it may be you need to bank that cash, to redeem it 1-to-1, potentially. Whereas you've got because it only has its value if everyone's accepting it.
Yes, exactly.
And so again, that's
perception.
Perception, again, a perception of value. So we give it value. So again, within your own community, you're better off having assets that cannot be strong. So I always give the example, like tomorrow that cash can be deemed not legal tender, whereas your can of chickpeas tomorrow, it's still a can of chickpeas. It still holds its value. So again, when we talk about assets, they're everything. What's going to hold its value and cannot be written out of having any value or deemed or printed away to having no value. So that's always this big shift, what's coming. This huge shift is coming. Understand that you need to have assets that can circumnavigate any of that eventuality happening. So, yeah, there are massive issues with cash, no question.
Yeah, Sam, this has been a really fascinating kind of walkthrough of some of those big myths and objections to at least exploring this new world of digital assets, crypto, blockchain, digital finance, decentralized finance. And I understand all of those fears, and they're fears that I've personally gone through over the last decade, because this is and those fears have been heightened, I think, the last couple of years, where people are even more wary of these control structures.
Yeah, totally.
But within that fear, there is also opportunity, and I think that's what's important. That whether people decide to embrace this world of digital finance, digital blockchain, this new emerging technology, it's really up to them. But ultimately, but having the awareness and the education is something that at least give you the opportunity, if you wish to look for those opportunities, which in times like this, when most people are in fear, uncertainty, and doubt, they're wired to see more fear. They're wired to see more uncertainty, and that disbands us, it disables us, it disempowers us, and we become almost closed-minded to the opportunities that could be glaring us right in the face.
Totally, Dan. What's interesting is that almost you can see people hanging on to old paradigms that, even with their awareness, they know were awful anyway. So it's a kind of almost like protect you. So the financial reset is a great example, because the financial reset needs to happen for good reasons. I mean, it's not what they have in plan. That's not how they want to move it, but it has to happen anyway. So if one is then holding on, going, I want what's happened before, well, I think if you've done a lot of research and you've woken up to a lot of stuff, you'll realise that that whole system was broken and is. So to be holding on to it out of fear of the new, then you're in no man's land. You can't go anywhere because you're actually trying to hold on to something. And that's part that goes back to cash, almost like this complete debt cash system, which is backed by nothing, worthless. We're almost saying, I don't want to lose that. Do you see what I mean? Whereas really, that's it's screwed. It's over. I mean, it needs to be changed. So yes, this is a time for change. Certain factions will want to bring in change to them, but this is a time for us to do great things and great change and navigate. So this is a huge opportunity and a huge gift and a really like a calling to do what a lot of us knew we needed to do, or but it's almost like the matrix has become so bad that we can't even be lazy and go, I'll still be involved with it, because that's where a lot of us were, aware of how wrong things were, but you could still deal with it. The gift is they've made it so dystopian and so bad. It's almost like we're forced to get on and create new solutions and look at things and learn. And I come back to education. I want to give my mum as an example because she's in her late 70s. But obviously, now I'm back in the UK and on this path, talking about finance, crypto. She's, always been stressed and scared by finance. She is now empowered and excited through education because it's really not being clear that leaves us in fears because we don't know where we are then. And when we don't know where we are, we literally, how can you navigate? You don't know where you are, And that's where, like, when you get people who understandably come into crypto on a bull market, a friend said to them, just buy some of that, they bought it. That's great when it's going up on a bull market just because everything's going up. When things are happening now, understandably they're stressed because they don't know what they hold. Whereas if you understood what you held and you understand why and you've got conviction, you understand what's happening, then you can hold the same thing that person's holding, completely relaxed, and they're in a panic. Only because you know where you are and they don't know where they are. So finding out where you are is the baseline, really.
Absolutely, and I think throughout this conversation, you've underlined the importance of awareness and education as the fundamental baseline of becoming empowered.
Totally, about all angles. Yeah, in all
and claiming your sovereignty.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think that finance is such a big control, which is why I started talking about financial reset, because finance is one of the biggest controlling mechanisms in the world. And what I've realised from doing these talks is it's been amazing, even amongst awake communities, how few people who are extremely been busy, amazing lives, are really not even aware what fiat currency is. That's how obfuscated things have become. That we've become so detached from things that these are successful intelligent people. I'm not criticising them. It's just I know how the game works. We don't think about all these things. But that's been a thing to learn for a lot of people, which is didn't even realise that their cash was backed by absolutely nothing. So when you understand that, then it changes your mindset and everything. So again, I come back to education to get empowered.
Yes, the last thing I want to underscore on that, this is the thing for me about cash, because I understand, I've got a lot of friends who are kind of cash purists, and that's entirely almost driven by the desire to remain invisible to government and to privacy, which I fully back.
Totally.
I haven't done what I've done for the last couple of years, because without having that comparable, I feel strongly about that too. But at the same time, I also see cash as it is literally the symbol of the most corrupt economic system. The financial, the fact that money is based on nothing, it is created out of thin air, and it's how it supports the entire centralized banking system. On one hand, yes, we have all of, but if we only focus on that benefit of cash and we ignore everything else that it represents, then we're clinging on to something that is actually far darker than we may think.
Totally, and it's taken us right back to where we started in the lovely Gestalt, which is binaries. Then the trouble with binaries, cash is king is a binary statement.
Yes.
Yeah, cash has some qualities. Digital assets have some qualities. Gold and silver, they all have qualities, and they all have. So and then you can, once you've weighed up all the different qualities and really looked at them, and it takes time. But it is. I want to encourage people because it's really work that's worth doing, because it can really, as when you get empowered, where you are, it changes everything. Make the time to get clear and understand these things, and I know that you'll feel more empowered. I've seen that with people around me. I've seen the shift.
Yes.
My mum, she's in her late 70s, and she's got a whole different view on finance. And an amazing book is you've probably read it, is Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, Dan, which is great, shifting that mindset of how they've tricked everybody into kind of being wage slaves and worshipping that, and not understanding money. So if we can just educate people, because I'm like you, I want people to do well through this and thrive, and let's help each other get to make good things happen and create good stuff. Because it is that, I think, that always comes back to, yes, the control structures are very powerful and they do have a lot of power. They're not all powerful, and they rely on you believing their lies and following them, and your actions being dependent on their theatre. Once you've taken yourself out of that, you can get busy creating, as people always have done.
Absolutely. It's important that we don't abdicate our power to those power structures by our own behaviours. This is where education is important. So I want to close. You've been immersed in this world. You've shared so much today that hopefully will help people think differently about what we've been talking about. And, you and I, we said at the beginning, came together as a result of that talk that I had the opportunity of going to. But then we've worked together to put together a Navigating Digital Assets course. Yeah. And I love the way that you've talked about that navigating part today and the education part. So could you just tell our audience a little bit about what the purpose of that course is, how it's structured, what people will learn by going through it? Because inevitably people are going to listen today. And I know a lot of people think, I'm only just getting started. I want to know more. And we've put this course together specifically to address that need. So could you tell us a little bit about the course and what people will learn by going through it?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Well, obviously, as you said, you saw me in a in-person event, and obviously through meeting you and coming on the platform, and realised we can get out to more people because purely geographically, I can't get. I've done a lot in the south of England and meeting people, so that was really powerful to me. And again, to reach more people, because it's about empowerment at its core. And I think the feedback I've had and what I've seen from giving the talks and obviously people who've done the course is that this is very deep yet very accessible. Okay, so it's a real holistic view looking at all angles, because it's something that I didn't see anywhere else really where you can get that. And it's also helpful. I hope, that's the feedback I've had so far, that wherever you're at, it can benefit you. It doesn't mean that you even think, I want to get involved with crypto and I watch it. Even for people who want to understand the paradigm shift that's coming and understand what that is, then they're clear about what's going on and what's happening, and CBDCs and this digital shift and the good sides, the bad sides. So it helps people, even if they've got no plans to invest in crypto. They might change their mind after, they might not. But that's not what it's about. It's not about selling anything or saying this is the way. It's about shining that light and giving options. But then equally for the people who are already in crypto but are still confused, haven't really got the other piece of the puzzle, it can really bring clarity for them as well, get them more empowered. So it kind of covers all those bases down. It's really hard to we've often discussed, how do I sum it up? It's kind of hard to sum it because it's extremely broad, extremely and deep. It's full of paradoxes. It's very deep and very accessible. So it's been designed that you can have no experience of it. I think we've had feedback of people who have no awareness of this topic at all. And by the end of it, I've hopefully got somewhere that would have taken me when I began, or a lot of people on my own kind of trawl around, would have taken me years to get to, right? To really focus in on what's important and get key things, because there is so much info out there, but it's so confusing, and you always got to mix that with what's mainstream info, what's looking at the conspiracy side. So I'm trying to, as you know from chatting to me and with chats, I try and cover all angles because that's how my brain works. I like to see it from every angle and understand it. So that's what you're getting in a condensed form, that you really can be more empowered, whether you are involved already, want to get involved, or just want to understand this digital shift and what's going on with it. So it's really useful for anybody who's interested at all in this topic or is curious about this topic at any level.
Absolutely. And, we recorded it live together. It was a 4-hour event, and the feedback from the live event was incredible. People were saying things like, I can't believe how fast those 4 hours have gone. Literally, it was immersive. But the good news is we've then taken that 4-hour footage and we've broken it down into 3 modules, talking about the history of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, understanding more about the technological applications that Sam's touched upon today. You talked about, for those who do want to understand some of the jargon that's involved in the crypto ecosystem when people are talking about exchanges and wallets. Sam goes through all of that, talking about how to actually, get your money into crypto if you want to, how to store your crypto safely and securely. All of these kind of technical elements, Sam breaks down. It makes it really simple to understand, so you have the kind of grounded knowledge. And then ultimately, the last thing is really And I think importantly, with so many scams and so much hyperbole and so much misinformation in the marketplace, really breaking down how to think about the market, how to think about finance, how to think, your mindset really around market cycles and the manipulation that goes on, and building that kind of empowered mindset so you can manage your emotions. Today, Sam, what stood out for me is that you talk about these external events that have caused all this kind of chaos in the markets and all this uncertainty and all this emotions, and you're there like the rock in the river, that all this is going around you, and you're just like, I'm unchanged.
Well, I think that's absolutely nailed it, Dan, and that was my journey. I've been pulled around, so I've been through all that, and I think that's what other people said to me. Sammy, why are you so cut? Yeah, because nothing has changed. We know what's going on. I really want to empower people that if they're going to be involved, like you said, they've got the foundations to be involved properly, and that they do it properly, and that they don't get scammed, and I think that ecosystem which I put together so you can see where you are, just has helped people finally go, I know where I am now, right?
Yes,
that's huge.
Yes.
And absolutely, I do want people. I don't want people to be scammed. I want people to feel empowered. If they're in this space, I want them to feel strong and empowered.
Yes. Absolutely. So if you'd like to find out more about the course and see how it's laid out and structured, you enjoyed the conversation today and you'd like to hear more from Sam to help you to navigate this complex, it is a complex world, but to do so in a way that is free from those binaries. You want to actually just see things as they are, not worse than they are or better than they are. You just want to see it as they are. Then you can go to weareelevate.org/digital assets. You'll see more information about the course and how it's structured. And we talked about the event, the first event that Sam and I hosted together, which was the financial reset and understanding the financial reset. We did a 3-hour financial reset event. So we've included the recording from that event, which was a ticketed event prior to this course. We've also included that in the course. So you've got 4 hours of modules that have been broken down into bite-sized lessons, plus the entire recording to that event, which is where Sam goes into some more of what some people describe as the esoteric elements, talking about those cycles. He breaks all of that down as part of that conversation. I think, that, like I said at the beginning, was our most attended event of the year. It quite literally still is the most attended event that we had this year. So people have the footage of that as well. So the last thing I'll say is the course is available right now until Christmas and the new year. We did an initial launch, and it's £29.95. To join the course. In the new year, in January, that price is going up. It's going to be closer to £50. So if you're interested in taking the course, now is a really good time to do it. People would say, why do I have to pay? We've just had an hour-long conversation here, free of charge, and there's lots of information out there. Sam, what would you say to people about why it's important to invest in your education in this way?
Well, because I think there's so much value to it going forward. I think I think that was my realization when I was speaking to a mentor a while ago. Is like, we often can go think about short term, well, actually I'll try and just earn some money, but actually understanding all this can shift your whole paradigm for the longer term. So again, it's kind of like getting out of that short term thinking of, we can easily fritter away money on that, but actually can I use that to really get educated and get empowered and learn? So yeah, I think, and again, the time, it's how much of your time would it take to get that shrunk into that kind of format? Again, because I'm pulling together, years and years and years of my perspectives and thoughts, whatever, and communicating that across, and yeah, I feel adding value to your journey wherever you go from there. Your own sovereign journey, and that's what's really important. It's never about me saying do this, do that. It's about really shining that light on you so you can then take strong decisions and move forward from there in a better way.
Absolutely. So if you'd like to join us in the Navigating Digital Assets course, you can do so by going to weareelevate.org/digital assets. We'll put the link in the description for this episode as well. Again, no obligation to go any further than what we've said today, but if you are curious about what we've discussed today, then the course is a really great place to ground your education that Sam has painstakingly put together through all of his years of expertise and drawing on his wisdom from various different sources. So do have a look at that. We'll be having more conversations like this. It's really important that we are starting to look at these subjects when there is so much hysteria in the marketplace. It's important we have these grounded and focused conversations. In fact, Sam, as we've been recording, I had a pop-up on my emails that's someone's response to the fact that we're having this conversation was simply this one line: say no to digital currency. It should not be controlled by anybody but yourself. And again, to me, that we don't need to extract that statement now, but that to me underpins the fears that everyone has about everything we've just discussed, and hopefully this conversation. But the hard part is that one belief system can actually prevent people even witnessing this conversation, even taking the step to joining us today to actually understand how this is much more complex than what people might seem.
Well, totally. It makes me think, because we didn't actually touch on it, Dan, can we come back to just the idea that you do get people throw rocks at this space, really strong rocks, and I know you've experienced it yourself, and they don't even realize. So we've had the example where people have said anything to do with crypto or blockchain is evil, and yet they are giving this message on Odyssey, which is a decentralized blockchain project, which means that they can have their content hosted because it is decentralized on the blockchain, as opposed to Web 2.0 on YouTube, where it's owned by YouTube and censored. So there's a great example of a lack of education. You've got somebody saying that's all evil, whereas they are benefiting in a freedom, decentralized freedom, tangibly benefiting from this technology. So again, there's the perfect simple example of and again, I'm not criticizing people, it's just you don't know. But before you throw such binary rocks, I'd say do some education, get clear, and understand all the different use cases and what's going on really.
Absolutely, yeah, and those platforms, there's great benefits of those platforms. With all the censorship we've seen on the mainstream platforms, these decentralized platforms give us that opportunity to actually share our content in a way that's censorship free. But I use Odyssey. If you're using Odyssey, it's on a blockchain-based platform, but you're getting paid. You're getting paid in crypto. You're getting paid in crypto. If you're taking the ad revenue out of, I don't know how their model works, Odyssey, actually, in terms of their monetary system. But if you're earning rewards for sharing your content on Odyssey, it's paid in crypto. And the only way to take it out of Odyssey is to transfer it through an exchange. So
as we are on Brave, I'm on a Brave browser, or maybe you are too, Dan. So
yes, I'm using Brave right now.
Yeah. So, again, a lot of people can be pro Odyssey and anti crypto and not understanding that the two go together, that Odyssey is blockchain.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, thank you for this. You and I, whenever we get together, we end up talking for quite a while. So this is closing in on 90 minutes. So do let us know your feedback in the comments. Tell us what you thought about today's conversation. Was there any concerns that we didn't cover? Are there other questions that you'd like to have answered? These are important conversations that we need to continue to have. As we've talked about, if you'd like to further your education and you'd like Sam's style today, then please do check out the course, weareelevate.org /digital assets, currently available for £29.95. The price will be going up in January, so we encourage you to take action on that if you are interested, if it calls to you. But do let us know your feedback. We will be bringing more conversations like this, continuing to tackle these difficult subjects, trying to break through the noise to get through to a more nuanced view on a lot of these conversations that are happening out there right now, where the market is full of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Our goal is to empower you. And, I said Sam's like the rock in the river, that my wish for all of us is to be able to have that, that inner calm, that inner peace, that inner certainty whilst all the chaos is going around us, so that we can see clearly and we can take actions that can help us to elevate our own lives, but also to elevate the world around us. Because the future is not written yet, and the pen is in our hands to craft our own destiny. And I believe by becoming aware, becoming educated, becoming empowered will lead us to taking positive action to build the kind of future that you and I want to live within. And I really hope that Sam's conversation today has enlightened you on a very complex and important subject. So thank you, Sam, and thank you to our supporters who joined us live. We've recently launched we launched a supporter program. So those who kindly support us and enable us to do what we do at Elevate Media get to join us live in the room with Sam and I as we've recorded this. If you'd like to find out more about that, also go to weareelevate.org and you'll find out all about our community and how you can get involved. Thanks again to Sam. Thanks again to our live audience. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. Please share this. It's a really important conversation to have.